This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
We just got a Twitter. We just got a Twitter. I wonder who it's from.
Greetings, Greetings, Yellow Blazers, Blue Blazers, Bill Bryson lovers, Bill Bryson haters, epic survivors,
Death defiers, thrill makers, risk takers, people who like to go fast. Oh boy, I think that's going to need a cast.
Welcome to the Pox and Bliss podcast, a proud member of the Appalachian Trail family. My name is Pox Holiday, sitting directly across from me.
Puss in Boots.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about death stuff and living and, whatever.
Living and dying.
Yeah, living and dying. About 10 years ago, I told part of the story on the most recent episode with Disco, where I talked about there being, when I worked at NOC, a flood. We'd had like 4 hurricanes kind of come up the spine of the Appalachians, and it flooded. Like if you've ever been on the AT around the Nantahala, you can walk out the back door of the outfitter store, and you're standing on like a little bit of a deck, and literally just a couple of feet underneath this deck, the water was kind of lapping up against it because it was such a huge flood. And so they canceled. Obviously, the Forest Service canceled all rafting trips,
all fun
kayaking trips. So there were people there who had come for kind of, I think in the off season, it's a little bit less expensive to do like kayak instruction and kind of things like that. So there were people that had come up there to just go kayaking, to have instruction, to go on rafting trips. And they basically were like, look, you can't send anybody on these trips. Like, it's just unsafe. But if you would like to take people down for free who work for your company, you can do that. So basically, there were only like maybe 20 of us at work that day on the entire Nantahala Outdoor Center. And so we basically went in 2 shifts. Like, you want to go down the river? Like, yeah, sure. Your average trip from the put-in to the Nantahala Outdoor Center is about a little over 2 hours. Mm-hmm. These trips were taking 45 minutes. The water was so high and so fast. Yeah, you're just flying.
Yeah.
For those of you who know what picture or picnic rock is on the Nantahala, usually you jump off of it like 8 feet off of it into the river. I remember a friend of ours was taking photos that day and was standing on Picture Rock, and at one point in time, he had to jump out of the way of a raft coming towards him.
No.
Yes. And so it was a big water day.
Yeah.
And if you're a hiker, if you're a tourist at NOC, you can just walk up the river a little, like a couple hundred yards, and you can watch people go down Nantahala Falls. Well, Nantahala Falls was completely washed out, and just about maybe 20 feet past the falls was an 8-foot tall wave followed by a 10-foot tall wave. Both of them just kind of crashing over to the left. And so I was on the second shift. My wife went on the first trip, and her raft guide was Payson Kennedy, who started NOC. So he's been a raft guide for, almost 40 years at that point in time. So she had the greatest time, came back, said, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. My raft guide was like 10 years younger than me, and it was her first high water day ever. We fall out of the boat on the second rapid. We go the whole way. A couple people fell out along the way. We got them back in, and then it's time to go over Nantahala Falls. So we were weighted wrong. We had people in the wrong place. She literally switched us out as we're about to go over the falls. Like, okay, you get here, you get here, you get here. It's like, we've made it the whole way here. Why switch us now?
Why wouldn't you have thought about this earlier?
Exactly. So past guest T-Bone, he was in the front right part of the raft, and I was in the back left. He fell on me as the raft went. Basically, it didn't flip over, but it just basically went straight up in the air. And so at one point in time, I'm underneath the boat, but I don't know that's where I am. I fell out, and I keep getting hit by something, and I think it's a person. I keep thinking it's a person. Then I realize I put my hand up, and a self-bailing raft has little holes in the bottom of it. And I keep putting my hands through these little holes. It's like, oh shit. And I had this moment where it was like, you could just, not worry about this and you'd be fine. Because I was definitely underwater for a long time. It might have been 5 seconds. It might have been a minute. Mm-hmm. But I was definitely underwater for a while. And then I had this moment where the body, it just kind of goes, look, you could just not worry about this. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, I feel my fingers went through a few of the holes, and it was like,
I'm too young to die.
I know where I am. And so I literally had to, like, hand by hand, crawl my way out from underneath the boat. And I came up, and I could see the back of the raft. And I'm like, oh, I know where I am. And then I could look around, and I could see the sky. I could see everything. And then out of nowhere, Kathy Kennedy, who was the daughter of Payson. Well, she might as well have been this day. She just rips me out of the water, throws me into her raft, throws a paddle at me and says, "Start paddling." Like, okay. And just kind of kept all of us, calm. But it was one of those, just like, it was 45 minutes of just fine, having a lot of fun, followed by 1 minute of sheer terror and panic.
I'm gonna die.
And I know that's not a hiking story. It's definitely an out, sure, a backcountry-ish kind of story. But we're gonna have a guest on later who almost drowned. And you just have those moments, and something that she said in there reminded me so much of my story, where you do have these teeny tiny moments of clarity in the middle of an epic story that, like I said, I still remember to this day, looking up and seeing the sky. And I remember opening my eyes at one point underwater and being able to see through one of those little self-bailing holes. And it's just so weird that you can have those like horrible, horrible moments followed by, this is kind of pretty.
Yeah, everything slows way down.
And it makes me think about people that suffer from hypothermia, where they do have those like, oh, well, I'm so hot right now, I need to get into this river.
Right.
And it's like, no, you don't.
Oh, no,
it's 20 degrees out right now. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm sure as we talk a little bit more, I'm going to remember more and more of these epic things, but I'm sure you've had one.
I mean, you talk about that, like, everything slowing down, and all of a sudden you're like, it's all so pretty. Mm-hmm. Back in my pre-trail days, when I jumped on the triathlon bandwagon.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing a long-distance open water swim practice series, and there was one day that it was like, we're all going to get there at the ass crack of dawn and swim. It was a long swim. I can't remember how long. But it was like the point where you're as far away from anything as you can be. And I was like, shit, this is really hard. And I rolled over onto my back. And I just remembered like thinking, people don't, I mean, like, you don't watch an Iron Man on TV and like people don't backstroke.
Right.
It was sort of like, I hope everybody doesn't think I'm dying. But I rolled over onto my back, and I remember like the sun was rising, and I was like, it's so pretty. Like, this is so pretty right now. Yeah. And it was sort of that, like, again, that moment could have been 10 seconds or 5 minutes. I'm not really sure. But at some point it was like, all right, I'm going to roll back over and finish this goddamn swim, and then I'm going to eat a biscuit. Not really death-defying, but kind of a similar moment where it's sort of like everything stops, you kind of regain yourself, realize what the fuck you're doing, and get back to it. We've talked about before, especially when I talk about, like, I feel pretty strongly that people that choose to be in a wilderness setting should be prepared with some first aid knowledge. And I keep mine updated for the sole purpose that I seem to run into people who need first aid often. And I have seen some pretty crazy shit in my day. But I always seem to be like the first responder to car accidents and, fucking snake bite happened once that you're just like, okay, what are the odds? I told the story about the guy in Grayson Highlands that jumped up onto a picnic table, not realizing how close it was to the roof line of the shelter, and like fucking clotheslines his forehead on a rusted metal roof and like scalps himself. Like, it's that kind of shit that you're like, God damn it.
I just came out here for a one weekend.
I know that if I let that certification lapse, no, can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, the world is counting on me. So, I see a lot. I think that it's also pretty ingrained in me that, like, part of my job as being somebody that has some medical knowledge is that you minimize risk everywhere you can. And so that kind of leads to me being the safety sheriff, generally speaking. And I think the older I get, the better I get at, like, not being a fuddy-duddy at that. Like, I can gently make suggestions and not have it be like, guys, I think this water looks questionable, or, whatever. But, yeah. So
I wish you talked like that. Guys,
I don't think that's safe to drink.
So, talking about being the first person on the scene. So, let's see. Sunday, the 17th of October, I was going into Asheville because I was a big dork, and I signed up to be a co-host of this is one of the nerdiest things I've ever done, to be the co-host of a meetup for a particular podcast network. I'm a dork. I've talked about.
Did you dress in a costume?
No. I literally think I wore the same thing I have on today.
Good deal.
My Sunday clothes.
Oh.
Maximum Fun, which has one of my favorite podcasts, Jordan Jesse Go, on it, and one of my favorite NPR shows, Bullseye. They had like a meetup. You're such a grown-up with the NPR favorites. Well, it's really the only NPR show I like, right, but I only listen to it on podcasts.
This is the delicious dish.
I really feel like, quote-unquote, podcasts that are NPR related, they're cheating. They have public financing behind them, and not a lot, but, I don't know.
Yeah, I get you.
But anyway, so I went to this meetup thing in Asheville, and I was on my way there, and I was actually in my it was about an hour away is where I had to drive to, and I was in my little hometown, and I pulled up to a stoplight. Right as I pulled up to the stoplight, my side turned red, and I was like kind of on like a little feeder road to a main road, and I pulled up and stopped, looked down in the passenger seat at my phone because I was actually meeting our past guest T-Bone for this thing, and I looked over at my phone, and as I looked down, I heard just a squeal of tires. Oh. And I looked up just in time. I'm not kidding, like maybe 15, 20 feet in front of me. It was basically both cars involved had, like, I'd say 22 and under involved in the accident. Maybe college age in one car and high school age in the other car. And I looked up just in time to see a 2010 to 2014 Mustang just plow into the side of a Toyota Corolla. And I was like, well, the kids in the Corolla are dead. Mm-hmm. At least the kid in the passenger seat, there's no way that he's going to be fine. Because as I looked up, it was such a hard accident that the Mustang that hit it jumped up about 3 feet in the air and came back down. And so the Mustang was it started rolling towards me. Mm. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Finally, the kid stops the car and kind of turns the wheel so it doesn't roll up that way. And at the same time that this happened, I saw the passenger in the Toyota little Corolla or whatever the hell it was, the tiny car, cover his face because I saw smoke hit him.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was actually just the dust from the airbag.
Yeah.
But he was like, my eyes.
That stuff burns.
Right. He was like, shit. They all pop out. I'm not kidding you. One of the kids from the Mustang goes over to the kid in the Corolla and is like rubbing his back like, you all right, buddy? You all right? It was almost like they knew each other. Maybe they did. I don't know. But all five, there was 3 kids in the small car, 2 kids in the Mustang. And they all like walk over to the sidewalk and get out of the way. So my first instinct is I always keep rubber gloves in my glove compartment and console. And so I reach over, and then I remember I am half a mile from a hospital, which is also where they keep the ambulance. So I just was like, I reach over and I'm like, nope, not for me. And I grab my phone and I dial 911. And they're like, what's going on? Tell them. I said, there's been an accident. It's a great thing about living in a small area. I can say it's outside of the McDonald's because there's like McDonald's in the county. And they're like, all right, is everybody okay? I said, well, they all got out of the cars, but there's gasoline and glass everywhere. And they're like, okay, we'll be right there. And so I'm from Raleigh, when our area code here is 919. I don't dial 911 very often. So I called and blah, blah, blah. And then it's one of those where, like, when there's a big accident, it's almost inevitable that something else is going to fuck up around that accident.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I literally just stepped 1 foot out of my car. I yell over my windshield to these kids, 919's on their way. And they all look at me like, okay. And then I get back in. I literally have a green light in front of me. I put my arm outside the window like, I'm coming. I have my hazards on like, don't anybody fucking hit me. I've got a green light. And I pull off. As I'm pulling off, the ambulance is pulling up. I really didn't see the accident. I don't know what the hell it was, so I didn't need to fucking be there. So I'm like 200 yards away from the accident. I was like, 919. God damn it. 919.
That's where the confusion was.
So then I just kind of pull on up, and my wife and I, we had gotten into like a general marriage tiff.
Right.
Like it happens. You just say something silly, and it's like I'm leaving, and I don't mean like I'm leaving. I'm going to go do whatever I'm going to go do.
I need to go get a snack pack.
And so I was like, I need to call my wife and tell her I love her. I just saw a really bad accident. So I look at my phone. And on my phone, like in the upper left-hand corner, it's a droid. It will say like it'll have a little Twitter picture, or it'll have the F for Facebook, or if I get a text message from somebody, it has another little symbol. And in the left-hand corner, there is a red shield with a white cross in the middle of it. I'm glad you're looking at me like that because I call her and I said, there's this weird thing going on. And I said, there's a little cross there. I don't know what it is. So then I touch the button and it says, I forgot what exactly it said, but it's like emergency, something data plan. I'm like, huh. And there literally is like 5 minutes, 58 seconds, 57, 56. It's like a countdown. So I'm like, what is that? And so then I meet T-Bone at this meetup. He goes to it. And I tell him, and he's like, that's kind of strange. Like, yeah. So then after a little while, like 4 more people show up for this meetup thing. And I relay the story. And I said, yeah, and there's this weird little cross thing there. And like, apparently I couldn't get to my data plan. And they're all shaking their heads like, yeah, dumbass, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, well, what it is if you think about it, you have your phone plan and your data plan. If you cut the data plan in, it basically gives you a boost to your phone signal. So you have like 4G plus. You have true 4G at that point in time because you're not getting data in. And so that helps out if you need to actually make a real phone call.
Right.
But so I guess but like all 4 of the people at the table are like, yeah, uh-huh.
Never heard of it.
I'm like, I've never heard of this. They're like, yeah, it just makes sense. And I'm like,
never heard of it.
Yeah, I've never met you fuckers before. You don't need to talk to me like this. I'm like, okay. And they explained it to me like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. And then I was like, so do you guys dial 911 often? And all of them had dialed 911 in the last year. It's like, holy shit, of course. Now I live in the middle of fucking nowhere. These people live in cities. One of them had called 911 because someone tried to break in their house and then broke into their car. So I'm like, okay, that one makes sense. But like, I just don't dial 911 that often.
Because I don't think most people dial 911 that often, when I see something weird going on, I will now. Like,
Right.
I do now. Like, there's a house near my house. It's, like, on the main road. Like, I live in a neighborhood. It's on the main road. And it's sort of one of those, like, shady houses that you're always
The one
sort
up
of
on the
like...
right?
Yeah. And,
The one that literally, I apologize. But
no, go ahead.
one time my wife and I drove by and there was a child
Yeah.
playing in the tree because there is a garden hose
Yeah.
in the tree that operates as a swing.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
We were like, oh, okay, that looks like fun.
Right. So I pull onto a side road to get to my neighborhood, and there is a car. Like, it's kind of one of those, like, you turn right to get onto this side road.
Right.
And it's sort of a blind turn. And, like, right when it stops being a blind turn, there's a car stopped and parked in the middle of the road. And I'm like,
Right.
what the fuck? You know, it's sort of one of those, like, okay. And I drive around it. As I drive around it, I look over at it. And there's, like, 4 kids sitting in the car, and, like, the driver's seat is empty. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. Like, that guy is obviously buying drugs from this house.
Right.
And he has left his car full of kids in that space. Like, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So, being the safety sheriff that I am, I drive down a block, I turn around and I park on the street so I can watch this car. I call 911, and I'm like, there's a car full of kids parked on this road. There's no adult present. I need somebody to come look at it, like, check it out. And they're like, is everybody safe? And I'm like, well, it's in a really unsafe space. I'm not going to lie. And it looks like there's like 4, maybe more kids in this car. And then I felt really, really bad when this man crosses the street with like a gas can in his hand. I'm like, oh, I'm a terrible person. He had run out of gas. Granted, still not a great place to leave a car full of
kids.
Yeah, I mean, it was cold outside, but I would have still, like, I would have told all my kids, like, get over, like, get out of the car, go sit in this yard.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, I've called 911 on the crazy neighbor.
Yeah.
I've called 911.
On Karen?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've called... Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll totally do it. One time I got really pissed because there was a raccoon on one of the, like, town, like, Park Service nature paths.
Yeah.
There's a raccoon that, like, looked like it was drunk / dying.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something real wrong with that raccoon.
Yeah.
And it was, like, really close to the parking lot. Like, I wouldn't have called if it was, like, a little more remote, but it was really close to the parking lot, and I called 911, and you could tell that, like they put me through to police, and they were pissed that at 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon that I was, like, calling to report a raccoon. And so they were like, we'll put you through to animal service or animal control. Animal control is closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
So that put me back through to the police. And then I got this whole spiel from a police officer.
This city's animal control is a joke, by the way.
Yeah. So I got a lecture from the police officer about, ma'am, we're going to go ahead and let nature take its course on this one. I think that this raccoon's probably dying. You just need to let it go on and die. And I'm like, cool, but it's like
it could be rabid.
Yeah, it's like 50 feet from a very busy parking lot.
It'll give you guys a chance to shoot something.
Right.
Come
like,
on.
Can't you do something about this? But I tend to be one of those people that I get, like, really upset that why aren't you doing something? Do more.
Well, speaking of raccoons. Mama used to sweep off the porch with a broom.
Mama always used to sweep off the porch with a broom.
I hit one the other day.
Oh no.
And this motherfucker was like, you know, people that know the show, Kool-Aid, my dog.
Yeah.
It was like Kool-Aid sized.
Oh.
And
that's a big guy.
it was big as hell. And it was close to where I live, about 2 miles from where I live. There's a series of sketchy ass turns in the highway, and they basically enough people missed those turns and literally drove off the sides into the Tuckasegee River.
Right.
So now they have like 4.5, 5 foot tall concrete barriers between the lanes.
Yes.
Well, we had rain for like 5 straight days up in Western North Carolina, and as I was rounding one of the last turns, a person was coming in the other direction, where the concrete barriers end. So I had to turn my brights off. It was
Right.
it was like 12:30 in the morning,
Right.
and ooh. And as I came around the corner, someone was coming the other direction, so I had to turn my brights off. And as I turned my brights off, I realized I'm in the right-hand lane. In the left-hand lane, there's something there. And basically, the raccoon hit the concrete barrier, freaked out, and ran. As I turned the brights back on, ran right in front of my... It was like one of those where you're like, boom, boom, and you felt it hit the back of the car. Like,
Yeah.
oh...
You know what? I feel better about those though, because I think one of my like biggest fears is that I'm gonna hit something with my car
I'm gonna wing it,
and I'm not gonna finish it.
Yeah.
And like I had a friend in college one time that he was like, I hit a deer, and I was like, you hit a deer? And he was like, yeah, it was just its leg. I think it's okay. I was like, no, that's not okay.
Well, see, my biggest fear, like what I like, where we are, you're like, well, I'm gonna hit something, but the nice thing is that they're predators where I live.
Yeah.
Like whereas in around Raleigh and something like that, they're not that many bear or mountain lions that are gonna.
There was a bear.
That's true. There were.
There was a bear. There were 2 of them actually.
But put it this way.
There was the bear on the NC State campus and a bear in, what was it, 5 Points?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So you just shove it with your bears. We got bears here.
And the best part is, I know you're mocking somebody that we both follow on Facebook.
Bears. You hear that?
And guess
bears.
what? And guess
no,
what?
I don't follow her anymore.
I don't follow her either.
Bears. Bears in the downtown.
It's one of the people that I talked about on the Disco podcast, where I was like, yeah, we talk shit about people we know for about half the time.
Yeah.
And it's amazing whenever you stop following them that you don't talk as much shit.
It's good for the soul. You know what? One time there's a pretty large lake near Raleigh, and the highway crosses it. So there's a really long bridge over that lake. And I was driving over that lake late at night one night. It was very dark. It was like no moon kind of thing. And as I am driving across, again, it's like a Cocker Spaniel sized possum is crossing the street in front of me.
Yeah.
It was one of those, like, it was kind of towards the end of the bridge. So it was like there was a place for him to go kind of thing. I slam on my brakes. This is back when I drove a big pickup truck.
Yeah.
So I slam on my brakes, and it's to the point where, like, you slam on your brakes and they're close enough that, like, you can't see them anymore.
Yeah.
But you know you didn't hit them.
Yeah.
And so I am sitting in the middle of, like, the end of this bridge, stopped, brights on, and I'm like, I don't want to get out of my car because that's a really big, nasty possum. Like, I don't care who you are. Possums are really ugly, except if you're in Australia. Australian possums are the cutest thing ever.
Really?
They're adorable. Like, really, really cute.
But they don't have syphilis like koala bears. You know that, right? Like,
No.
like 90% of koala bears have syphilis.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Can you get it from them?
I guess.
I mean, obviously, if you put your dick in them, I bet you probably could. But, like, you know.
Yeah.
Did you know? Did you know
if you put your dick in a koala bear?
Did you know that koalas are one of the dumbest mammals, and they have, like, the smallest brain to body ratio?
Well, I know according to the Google commercial, they sleep for 20 to 18 hours a day.
So koalas are so dumb that if you put eucalyptus leaves on a plate and give them to a koala, the koala won't know what to do with them.
They have to get them off
They
of
have
the
to
plant.
pull them off the tree. Isn't that funny?
Speaking of Google commercials, the one where the girl learns how to tie the fucking
I know
knot.
what you're going to say.
I'll just put it this way.
If you have to ask Google how to tie a knot, you should not be climbing.
Especially the next day.
Yeah.
The next day, you should not be climbing a sequoia tree.
Yeah, it's probably a bad move.
Ah, jeez.
Even if you need to double check. If you have to double check, you're doing it wrong. Anyway.
Also, if you're checking on the double fisherman's knot, I know 0 knots. I've got, honestly, like, I can kind of do, I could do a figure 8 on a bite. I could probably do a figure 8 follow through, But the one knot I know I can do is a double goddamn butt fucking fisherman's. And so
I truckers hitch everything. Every fucking
everything
thing.
is trucker hitched.
Everything is trucker hitch.
I don't know the trucker hitch. I can't do it.
And I want you to know that every time I trucker hitch, there is a guy nearby with like a semi, and they're like, "Oh my god, you tied that so well." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Not
it's
a
trucker's hitch.
semi-truck, but yeah.
It's trucker's hitch.
I was just
See how tight that is? You can play it like a banjo.
You see how tight that is?
Trucker's hitch.
Boom.
Bam.
Yeah, oh god. Anyway,
let me finish my
Please do.
story.
Goddamn Google.
Okay. So I hit my brakes. I am stopped in the middle of a bridge. I cannot see this possum. I do not want to get out of the truck to find out where the possum is. So I figure I'm going to count to 20. And then I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
So I count down to 20. All I did was take my foot off the brake. And it's like the whole car just goes boom, boom. And I'm like, oh, son of a bitch, possum. Like it's just this like doonk, doonk. And
I'm going to warm up next to this nice warm tire.
Oh, god damn it. I'm like, you know what? At that point, you deserved it, possum. I did everything that I could possibly do without putting myself in danger to ensure your safety, and you literally laid down on the job.
We'll be right back. I gotta pee.
Fucking possum. Fucking possum.
That was really good. That was a good segment there. That was good.
Gold.
So earlier this week, I was kind of cruising around AppalachianTrails.com, and I came across an article that had a name that kind of sticks out. I almost died today. And it was a lady named Julianne, and she's going to hike she's planning a thru-hike in 2015. And on one of her kind of practice hikes, she literally got swept away by a river. And she lived to tell about it. And here's our interview with her right now. Well, cool. Well, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? You're getting ready to do a thru-hike next year?
Yes, I'm doing my thru-hike in the spring, starting in April.
Nice. And you live kind of close to the Whites?
Yes, I live in Concord, New Hampshire, which is about an hour south of the White Mountains, which is fantastic. So it means I can go up there every weekend.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm jealous. I mean, I live, I say I'm jealous, but I live 5 minutes from the Smokies.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Wow.
Unfortunately, I have dogs, so I can't take them in through the park, so I don't go hiking there quite as much as I'd like to, though.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine that's... Oh, what a tease.
I know, it is. And it's like, I one day before I die, I would like to finish the 900-mile, quote-unquote, thru-hike of the Smokies. That's like, 'cause there's 900 miles of trail, so I'd like to do that, but the dogs look at me when I leave the house, and they're pissed.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, do you want to tell us about your the fateful day that you wrote about on AppalachianTrails.com?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm leaving the Appalachian Trail in April, and I have to finish by August. So I'm leaving mid-April. So it's going to be 4.5 months, which means I pretty much have to, I have to have a really good pace throughout the trail. So this fall and this winter, I've just spent a lot of time increasing my mileage, especially in the White Mountains, so that I can hike 15 to 20 miles a day feeling pretty confident. And I feel like if I can do that in the White Mountains, that will translate pretty well down south. And I'll be able to make my goal of doing the Appalachian Trail in 4.5 months.
Right.
So we have this thing in New Hampshire called the New Hampshire, the 48 4,000 footers. So it's all the mountains in New Hampshire that are 4,000 feet and above, and there are 48 of them. And it's kind of like a hiker thing where everyone wants to do all 48, and so I don't know if every state has something like that. Do you guys have anything like that down in your area?
Yeah, we have a lot of 6,000 foot peaks, and I can't remember the total number. I think it's like 38 or 40.
That sounds right.
Something like that. We have a friend who's attempted to do it, and I mean, then I guess it's kind of similar to Colorado and the 14ers or something like that.
Yeah, the 14ers. It's so funny. The 14ers makes my 4,000er sound even better.
You got to take what you can get.
Yeah. So anyway, so we have there's a more infamous mountain in New Hampshire. It's called Owl's Head, and it is just a very long hike. It's an 18-mile loop, an 18-mile out and back. And there's no view or anything like that. It's like this little tiny mountain that's just barely makes over the 4,000 feet mark. But it's just in the middle of nowhere. It's one of the most isolated areas to get to in terms of hiking wise. You're like in the middle of this mountain range. You have to hike in through the mountain range to get to this tiny little lump in the middle of the mountain range.
You said
I figured it would be good. Go ahead.
You said that there's no view?
Yeah, there's really no view at the top. There's just it's a wooded top.
So it's totally hiking the hike to hike the hike.
Yes, it's absolutely just about crossing it off your list.
All right.
So it's one of those ones that like no one really wants to do. Like there's no reward, and it's an 18-mile hike. It's just a pain in the butt. But I figured I would do it, and it'd be great training because it's 18 miles. Like I could pump this out in a day. It'd be great training for the Appalachian Trail. And I had my audiobook of Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And so I was like, I'll listen to this the whole way. It'll be a great experience, and I'll just get through it. And the other kind of infamous piece of it is that it's a pretty flat trail, actually, for a good amount of it. It's very gentle, very rolling, and it's not until the last mile or so that it's like a very, very, very steep slide trail. So that was the only, so those are the most infamous things I'd heard about it. So I go out, I wake up 3:30 a.m. Friday morning so that I'll have enough daylight to kind of tackle away at these 18 miles. Because obviously it's October now and there's not that much daylight here.
All right.
So I get out to the trail, and it was my first time I've ever hiked before dawn. It was a weird experience for me in terms of I'm solo hiking in the woods by myself in the morning, and it was in the dark. It was kind of it was a first, but it was beautiful at the same time.
Nice.
And so I'm hiking out, and I'm having a great time because it's not super strenuous. It's just long and tedious. And I'm laughing my head off and just thinking about Cheryl Strayed and all the crazy things she does on her hike. And I'm like, wow, we have way more in common than I ever imagined. And it was just great. And then all of a sudden I come across this river crossing. And no one had ever mentioned anything about the river crossings, really. I think the night before, one of my friends just just at last minute was like, you might want to be careful on the river crossings. Like, that was the last, it was like, oh, like, what? Like, that was such out of the blue things. No one else had ever mentioned it. So when I finally got to this river crossing, I was like, like, this is interesting. And it was very wide, and normally it's supposed to be ankle deep, and I have no idea what was normal for this river crossing. But at the time, when you first waded in, it was about knee deep, and so I was like, this can't be too rough. And granted, I'm not a hiker. I'm not good at gauging my rapids, right? And so I didn't realize that this was very rapid mountain water. And you would think that when you see like white caps and like rushing water going very, very fast, you would think that you would turn around at that point. But being 8 miles into a 18-mile loop, 18-mile out and back, I was so close to being done. I was just like, why would I turn around now when I'm so close to this mountain?
Exactly.
Right. So I pushed through the first river crossing, and I kind of laughed it off after. I was like, wow, that was hard, but I did it, and I'm a badass. And I was like, that's cool. And then I remember in Zach Davis's book, Appalachian Trials, he talks a moment about like loving the tedious parts and how we have to kind of embrace them.
Right.
And so after I finished that first river crossing, I was like, that was terrible. But I was like, but I loved it. Like, I'm so happy and so grateful that I get to be doing this on my Friday. Like, what a cool thing. So I'm loving this, and I'm smiling, and I'm freezing cold and wet from crossing the river, from the October mountain river in the White Mountains.
Yeah.
And I get to the second river crossing, And I didn't even realize there was a second river crossing. And I see this one, and my heart just broke because so during the time period between the first and the second river crossing, it started torrential downpours. Like, it just was raining and raining. And because the mountains were waterlogged from the amount of rain we had the day before, all the water just, it was about to become something through. It hadn't yet at that point. So, but when I see it, like, it's very wide. It definitely was deeper than the first river crossing to begin with. But again, I was like, well, I made it through the first one. Let me just get through this. I'm so close to my finish, and then I can go home. So again, I get into the water and wade in, and it's getting deeper and deeper. And I get to this part, and I'm like 3/4 of the way through at this point. I'm so close.
How high is the water at this point?
How high is water at this point? It's about like mid-thigh.
Okay.
And so if for people who are not water savvy, when you're in rapids, anything above your knee is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and I was not aware of this. I maybe it's a good thing I wasn't aware. I don't know, maybe I would have been more anxious.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, from the downpour and just the offstream from the mountains, the water just rose and quickly. Like, I was kind of stuck in a spot where it was too slippery to move forward, and I was trying to navigate my way through, and the water was so strong. It was I don't know. I mean, if I didn't do CrossFit, there was no way I would have the leg strength to support just standing up in that water.
I read in your article you talk about the fact that you had just set a bunch of personal records the week before as far as squats and things like that go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was feeling really pumped up because from the intensity of my mountain climbing this fall, it really helped my CrossFit out. And all of my CrossFit weights, all of my Olympic lifts, all my weights jumped up ridiculously higher than they ever were before. So I was feeling good. I was like, I can do this. I'm a strong woman. I can do it.
Right.
But then the water rose, and it just very rapidly, it just came up to above my belly button, swept me off my feet, and I was gone, just going down. And I didn't know this, but for people who are hikers, you should know that when you cross rivers, you should always unbuckle your bag.
Yep.
Because you don't want it to drag you down. And I feel very fortunate that did not happen to me, but that was an afterthought that I was like, that could have been really bad. Because I had done a little bit of whitewater kayaking before, whitewater rafting once before, I knew you're supposed to keep your feet in front of you so they don't get caught on a rock and don't get swept under. So I did that, and I had my poles in my hand, so I very quickly got my poles in a position to get stuck on something, and I ended up throwing them down into the water ahead of me so that and thank God they both stuck into a rock, or somehow they both got stuck into something at the same time, and I was able to stop myself from getting kind of pulled away. But then I had to somehow, I don't know how I did it, but the water was rushing so hard I had to get my feet underneath me again. And that it was just such one of those moments where it could have been 5 seconds or 5 minutes. I have no idea. It just was time kind of stops, and you're like, what the heck do I do now? I barely have control over what's happening to my body at this moment.
You said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Our sound is so messed up. It kind of sounds like I'm interrupting. I apologize. But you said you were talking about the 5 minutes or 5 seconds. You said in your blog post, you said that you were able to look up and you saw the leaves kind of twinkling in the skylight, and they were kind of falling off the trees, and it's that weird thing when time freezes, but you were able to see leaves falling and that kind of thing. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes. It was because while I'm stuck here in this moment, I have one of the most beautiful moments of my life where I look up, I'm on my back, and I'm just trying to figure out how to get control. And I see above me, these leaves falling down with the torrential downfall, rain, that there's all these leaves, the last leaves finally falling down from the trees. But because of the rush of the river and the air coming off the river, just that energy, they weren't falling down. They were just kind of dancing midair.
Yeah.
Like they weren't going, and it was such a beautiful moment among this terrible, terrifying moment in my own life. But I remember that very distinctly. Like that image will never leave me. But it was one of the most beautiful images I've ever had.
Yeah.
But it's just funny how all those things can go together sometimes too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do finally get control, and I'm able to, get my feet below me. And I had this moment where I'm like, I want to keep going because I want to finish this mountain, but also knowing in my heart of heart, right, that would be a very stupid idea. That clearly this is a dangerous setting, and I'm putting others in danger by going forward. Because someone's going to have to come out and save my butt. Especially in torrential downpours, trying to even attempt a slide trail is just a terrible idea. It's just not smart. So I'm 3/4 of the way across the river, and I then realized that I'm stuck, and I literally can't even go back. Where I was, it was so deep and so strong that trying to take a step anyway would have been gone again. And it was just I remember sitting there being just laughing, because I was like, what is happening right now? How many times in your life are you literally so stuck with no option?
Yeah.
And my only feasible option of just standing still was also a deadly idea, because the water was so cold I couldn't even feel my legs anymore at that point.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's just one of those moments where you're like, the only way I'm going to survive is if I can just power through this. And so somehow I did get footing somewhere, and I did power through that second river crossing back to the way towards the trailhead versus towards the mountain. And I quickly put on all my very wet wool clothing, because, by the way, even if you think you're not going to fall into a river, you should still put all of your clothes into a dry bag beforehand. So my clothes are wet because I did not think about that. I was not expecting to fall in.
No.
Right. There's so many things that, I know when I read, Cheryl Strayed's Wild or, Bill Bryson's Walk in the Woods, so many things happen that you're like, duh, of course that was going to happen. Why didn't you think of that? And then in my own life, there's so many moments looking back, I'm like, duh, of course that was going to happen. Why didn't you think of that? Yeah, so I finally, I put on all my wet wool, even though it's wet, at least it was wool. And I was like, well, at least this should help a little. And I put my rain jacket on. It didn't matter because I was soaked, but I was hoping, for some sort of insulation with that.
Yeah.
At this point, I was quite hypothermic. I mean, I was shivering uncontrollably. My legs were numb. I mean, I was in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
It just wasn't smart. I had no more dry clothes. There was nothing left for me. And so I decide I run back to the first river crossing to try to just warm my body up. So I'm just running to warm up, and then I get to the original river crossing, and the water was so high from the rainfall that happened between. So instead of now being knee to mid-thigh or waist deep, it was just very deep all the way around. And so I had one of those moments where I think for about 45 minutes or so, I was walking up and down the riverbank trying to find any area that would be shallow enough for me to cross.
Right.
Realizing I'm stuck between these two rivers now, and one of the most isolated trails in New Hampshire. I'm hypothermic. I have no dry clothes, nothing to stay overnight. Just a terrible situation. And I didn't include this in the blog, but I kept just hoping these two super jacked mountain men would come up to the river trying to hike Owl's Head and see me and just save me. I was like, or mountain woman, I don't care, whatever, just some really big people who can power through this river, or even with some rope. I don't know, anything. And so, so I waited for about an hour again as I'm walking up and down the river trail, and there's obviously no one coming. And Owl's Head is so isolated that if you're going to be attempting it, you have to start super early in the morning. I would have seen them. There was no one there to help me. It was me help myself or nothing.
Right.
So I remember doing squats and trying to do everything I could to warm my legs. Oh, and in the meantime, because my legs are warming up, I felt this throbbing in my legs. I didn't even realize that when I got swept away in the second river crossing, I had smacked my legs super hard against a rock that I never felt. And I had like this giant, I still have quite a bit of bruising from it, but I had like this giant welt forming, this black and blue welt that was like coming out beyond my knee. Like it just was so big. I was like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
So finally I realized that if I waited any longer, my adrenaline would have run out, and I needed to, either I did it now or never. And the sun came out for a brief moment. The rain stopped. The sun came out. I reached into my bag, and I had, I don't know, you guys familiar with Epic Bar at all?
Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Epic Bar I love this company. They're making this new hunter-gatherer trail mix that has cacao nibs in it. And I kept thinking about how, there's so many books where, they eat chocolate in times of crisis.
Like Harry Potter.
Like in Harry Potter. They do it all the time. They do it all the time. So, and, even in Unbroken, which is another book I had just finished, that when they're, surviving on the raft, and one of, the only food supplies that the U.S., was providing the World War II people, providing their
MREs
their
and stuff like that.
lifeboats with.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Providing a lifeboat. It was chocolate. That's what they put on the fishes.
Huh.
So, there must be something really good about chocolate that I need right now. So I ate out all the cacao nibs. I was like, this is my last meal. This is pretty damn good. I'll take it. I was just kind of sat there savoring, and I was like, I got myself pumped up, and I started yelling to myself, I can do this. I am strong. I can do this. I can do it. I can really do this. So I just plow in, plunge in, and so this was a pretty wide river crossing. I'm not good with spatial distances, but I know there's the 200 feet away from the trail peeing rule, and I'm pretty good at that.
Right.
So I feel or not peeing rule, but I guess pooping rule or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty good at that spatial. So I figured this river crossing was about 100 feet apart, I would say. It was pretty wide. And so I honestly, I earned every inch of that. So when I plunged in, it was very deep from the beginning. It was my waist deep to belly button deep the entire time. It's very rapid. I remember I got in the rhythm of putting one pole ahead of the other and inching my way. And because it was so strong, I couldn't go perpendicular. I kind of had to go parallel into the river, upstream,
right.
Parallel upstream, and when it got just a tiny bit weak, I could move my leg over an inch. And but before it'd be too strong that that moving your leg over an inch would completely throw you off balance, and I would then swept away. So I had to go upstream, move my leg over an inch when it was a little bit weaker, go upstream, move my leg over, and it was just the longest, most miserable. I mean, my poles were shaking violently from how strong the river was.
Yeah.
And it's each time I'd have to pull my pole up, completely out of the water in order to get it back into the water without being, swept away out of my hand. I'd have to stab it in to whatever was ahead of me as fast as I could and as hard as I could.
Right.
And it just, each movement was this giant feat of strength. So I'm going up and over and up and over and up and over and up and over. And there was a point, too, where I felt I was shaking violently. I was numb. I was cold. I'd been in the river for way too long. My arms were exhausted. My pole, everything's shaking violently from the river. And I remember this moment where I was just it'd be so easy to just give up. Just so easy. And
right.
it'd be done fast and bam, But I kept thinking about all of these just great survivalists I've been reading about, and basically their premise of their stories, really the big theme that was hitting at that moment was that survival is really about your attitude. And if you want to survive, you have to keep focused on the fact that you will survive versus that you're going to die. So when I was just at that moment of weakness, I felt like my muscles were going to fail. There was just nothing else I could do. I just kept really focused on the idea that I will survive. It was I will survive this. I will make it through this. And my mother's not going to have to worry about what happened to me for the rest of her life, you know?
Right.
So it was one of those moments where I just really kept focused on the fact that I was going to get across. And somehow, I feel like there are miracles out there, because somehow I had more strength, and somehow I got across the rest, just powered through with every last inch I had. And then I finally got over to the other riverbank, stepped onto the riverbank, and just, like, I just collapsed. I think I let out the most primal, like, roar I've ever let out in my life. And just,
can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it was just such an incredible relief. Oh my God, yeah, it was incredible, and then I survived. And then I had to walk the 8 miles out.
I was going to say, you still had 8 miles to go. Oh, shit.
But honestly, those are the best 8 miles of my life, because I've never appreciated being able to walk 8 miles out of a mountain more in my life. Like, those are I think I had a smile on my face that entire 8 miles.
Oh, I imagine. So, what after that, if you were going to give some advice to someone after that, like, what's the biggest piece of advice you can think of from your experience?
I think the biggest piece of advice is that sometimes the hardest thing you're ever going to have to do is to turn around when it's too much.
Right.
And it's okay. I think for so long I was afraid that if I couldn't make that second river crossing, I would be a failure, and that would mean that I wasn't going to be able to do the Appalachian Trail. It meant, in my mind, I was like, it means I won't be tough enough to do the trail. And that was the biggest thing for me, to finally turn around and say, no, like, I'm smart enough to do the trail now, because I know when my life is worth more than taking this risk.
So are you planning on doing the AT by yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So, I feel like you start out by yourself, right?
Sure,
and then you meet a million people along the way. You're never really alone.
Right.
But yes, from A to B, I plan on doing it by myself.
Right. So I guess my question the whole time you're telling your story, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, as a woman who loves to do solo backcountry adventures, and whenever I have run into circumstances, like, I'm always kind of hyper aware of, like, what is safe to do by myself and what isn't. Was there ever a time where you were like, damn, I really wish I had a friend with me?
Absolutely. Because if I had been swept away, at least someone would have known where to look for my body. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was the hardest thing in the back of my mind. I was like, my mother is not going to ever know what happened to me.
Yeah. That, or, I think probably if I had been in your situation, I also would have been going, damn, I read Eric Ralston's book, and I really should know better, because I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place right now, and what I really don't want to do is have to saw my own arm off. So.
Right. And you know what I think I learned from this is, like, there are moments where it's okay to not be alone. So, like, in my plan for the Appalachian Trail is, when there's a river crossing, I'm going to buddy up.
Right.
Like, I'm just not going to do it by myself. And you know what? If it's too rapid for some reason, because there's a downfall or something, like a rainfall, I'm going to wait it out with someone. Like, I'll find someone, I'll wait it out, or I'll hitchhike. I'll find a bridge and hitchhike over it. Like, and that's okay in my mind now. I think before it was such a, like, no, like, I need to be able to do this. But now I realize that, like, it's okay. It's okay to have a buddy and to survive. That's much more important in the long run.
Absolutely. I do remember, I had never done a river crossing, of any kind of magnitude before I was on the AT. And I was very lucky to have two very good friends by the time that I was in Maine. When I did my flip-flop, I did half of Maine northbound, and then I went back and went south from there. But when I was in Maine first doing, like, the pretty legit river crossings, I think the first one was, like, knee-deep, and you just don't realize when you're not used to reading a river what that's like. And I remember, like, the first one that was knee-deep, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And,
right.
and everyone from there got a little bit deeper, and I can very distinctly remember we were mispronouncing the river. We were calling it the what were we calling it? The Pisquatakis. And in reality, when we got into town and we were talking about how swollen it was and rough it was, they were like, "Oh, you mean the Piscataquis?" And it was like, "Oh, yeah, that one." But this river was, I remember the bottom of my sports bra being wet by the time
Yeesh.
I got to the other side. And I'm not the tallest person in the world, but still. And that feeling of your trekking poles trembling and that inch by inch, and the whole time just thinking, like, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea. And getting to the other side and then just being like, holy mother of God. But then the next one was like, oh, well, this is actually pretty delightful. And then after a while, they kind of became second nature. But man, I remember like those first 5 river crossings just being like having a growing phobia of them until I finally like had to kind of conquer it. I can't imagine doing that by myself. And I can't imagine coming to that realization of like, holy shit, I just did that by myself.
Yeah, there is a certain, you guys both saying it reminds me, there is a certain vibration that happens with your trekking poles when you're like, oh shit. It reaches a certain, it's like, you can feel everything about it. Yeah, it's like, you guys saying that really took me back to that. I've done that too.
I also remember like the first 2 river crossings, the guys that I was hiking with, right. They would always, we would sit on the side of the river, and they would take their socks and boots off and tie their boots around their pack and put their socks in their pack. And they would put, strap their little chacos or their tivas or whatever their other shoes were onto their feet. And so I did the same thing because, they had done way more river crossings than me. And at some point I was just like, you know what? Nope, wearing my boots from now on. And I was like so glad that I figured that out because that made a huge difference in how comfortable I was. But man, holy cow.
Yeah, well, ironically, actually, when you speak of that, a few weeks before, I had watched videos on people crossing rivers in Maine on the Appalachian Trail. So I was kind of curious about that. I was like, well, what did people do with their shoes? Or, like, what's the best? And I saw people just, like, doing it with their shoes, and it just seemed like it was the best option. So I did actually do river crossings in my boots, and I'm so glad I did. I feel like I would have broken my feet if I hadn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference.
Let me ask you a question. I thought about this when I was reading it. Like for me, I kind of was given my trail name before I started because I got the chicken pox a week before I was supposed to start, so I kind of became Pox. That was kind of easy.
Oh.
So have you thought that maybe you're going to get a trail name before you get on the trail? Maybe something having to do with a river or something like that?
I don't know. That never even crossed my mind as having to do anything with the river.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll have. I'm a big fan of Doctor Who a little bit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show at all, but there's a character named River in Doctor Who that would all come together quite nicely.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Well, we don't want to keep you. I'll let you get to your prior engagement, but so people can find you on AppalachianTrials.com. They can just I found it. I saw it first, and then last night I had to all I did was I almost died today. Appalachian Trials when I Googled it, and you came right up. So.
Oh wow, great!
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's what you're known for. But is there anything you want people to follow you on Twitter while you're hiking, or anything like Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll be on Instagram. I don't even know my Instagram name.
That's fine.
That's how not good I am at that. But I do Instagram, so I feel like if you look at like the hashtag Appalachian Trials Instagrams, you'll find me pretty easily. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that, so one of my big challenges of doing Appalachian Trails is that I'm trying to really do it with, like, the best, most healthiest, like, diet possible.
Right.
And so if anyone's really interested in reading or talking about, like, really great food choices along the trail, that's something I'm super passionate about. It's something I'm just so happy to talk and share in that area as well.
Right on.
That's cool. Yeah, I have a friend who hiked the Pacific Crest Trail as a rawist. So It can be done.
As a what-ist?
A rawist, like one of those.
Oh, a rawist, like a raw foodie.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. It was pretty tough for him, but he did it. And as I heard someone describe it the other day, it's food that commits suicide. It's food that only falls off, the plant. It's like food that has to commit suicide. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Julianne, and we'll. I'm sure we'll catch up with you while you're on the trail.
Great.
Anything else you have for us?
Not for now. Oh yeah, I have one last quick thing.
That's fine.
This is so funny. I didn't mention this on my blog, but I wanted to share this with someone so badly. When I did finally finish the 8-mile hike out, and this is hilarious, there were two. I barely saw anyone, but all of a sudden I see these two giant mountain men on the trail. They're just like two NFL-looking mountain men coming towards me on the trail. And I stopped them because there are a couple mountains you could do off of this trail. And I stopped them and I was like, I just had to stop them. And I was like, you guys wouldn't happen to be on your way to Owl's Head today, would you? And they're like, yes, we felt like doing Owl's Head today. And so they were going to overnight it. Like they were going to go hike up to the rivers and then overnight it there and then finish the rest of the morning. But I just laughed my head off like the whole ride home. Like I was like, they came for me. They came.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julianne.
Yes. You guys have a great day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you
you
too.
too.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Dogs.
Speaking of dogs, my life's about to change.
You're pregnant.
I'm pregnant. Pregnant with a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be my first puppy.
Oh.
Since I was like a very young kid. Honestly, since I was 11. It's the first puppy. And got a chance to meet. Taco is her name. Taco, I think her name is Taco Zia Panko Holiday. All of our dogs have food-ish related names. Kool-Aid and Scrapple. Pennsylvania fans will know what Scrapple is. But Taco is a rat terrier dachshund mix. So she's going to be tiny. And I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Nervous.
I am too.
For me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's at least my wife's going to be home to be able to take care of her and that kind of thing. But it's like, yeesh, a puppy.
I'm nervous for you.
Why are you nervous for us?
Because Scrapple likes to eat things.
He does like to eat rabbits. And Taco is literally the length of my forearm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Yeah, just basically forearm.
No, really forearm.
Forearm, that's about it. And she, we'll see. I mean, yeah, the way we look at it is the first...
Taco is friends, not food.
Yeah. The way we look at it is...
Scrapple.
The first couple of months, she isn't really going to be out of our sight very much at all. And, so yeah, but it's funny, though. I look at, again, I'm not relating our pets to babies and children, but it's so funny how we have, we took very good care in training our first dog, Kool-Aid, and then the middle pup comes along. It's like, ugh.
He's a big dumb animal.
He's a big dumb animal. We're gonna leave. And now we're going to our third one where we're much more, we're ready, we're regimented, we've learned our lessons. So it is the Scraps is definitely the middle child when it comes to our animals in our house. But we literally have, keeping with the baby and child theme, we bought these things you put down on a changing table to when you change a baby. I guess it's cloth on one side and then PVC on the other side, kind of waterproof changing things. We have those for whenever she's sitting in our lap on the couch, or she's gonna. That's the other thing is that Scraps is way too big to hang out on the couch. So this is going to be the first other pet that's going to be on the couch with Kool-Aid.
Oh boy!
Granted, it's a huge couch. But so like we have these lap pee pads.
Do you think that she's gonna pee on you?
Well, just in case it's like I'm gonna pee. I don't know. Like we're just like preparing. We're like over preparing from the things we learned from the first two.
You're that couple that like styrofoams everything in the house.
No, but we are puppy proofing the house. Like getting.
That's what I mean.
Oh, is that it?
You're like baby proofing.
Yeah, we're
everything.
Well, because every other pet we've had, we've got them at like 6 months or beyond,
right.
And this one is 6 weeks. Like yesterday before I left for the house, I was like, or for down here, I asked my wife. I was like, because they're friends of my wife's from church, and it's like, I was like, could you text them and find out when they were born, because like, this is gonna be the first dog we've owned where we know its birth date.
Right.
Like, wow. And so yes, like that's the big thing for us is preparing for a puppy. Eesh.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, Kool-Aid, when we first had him, one day I came home from work and my wife was like, "You're never gonna guess what Kool-Aid did." Like, what's that? He really didn't like the vacuum cleaner, and so while it was still plugged in, he chewed through like the vacuum cleaner cord while it was plugged in, but he only got to like the first wire and it was brrr.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So
Ernie did that with my laptop.
Oh, really?
He like literally chomped once on the laptop cord, and the screen went from like full lighting to that just slightly dimmer, like when you unplug. And I was like, oh fuck! Like there wasn't even chew marks. It was just like chomp, and I was like, oh fuck! But he did like chew off the little. That was back when like internet routers had like the little
antennae,
short little stubby antenna. He chewed those all to fuck. He really liked chewing on wires back then.
Yeah, so we're just trying to hide those now. That's really as far as puppy proofing goes for us. Is just that.
I got Journey when he was 8 weeks old, and I'll tell you, like, the two smartest things that you've done so far is you're getting Taco when it's not fucking freezing outside.
Right.
Good job.
Thank you.
And you live in a 1-story house. Because in the middle of the night, when that puppy needed to go outside, I had to scoop him up, put on fluffy winter clothing, and then go outside for him to pee, and then go back inside. And there were, up and down stairs. And by that point, like, maybe you could, like, kind of convince yourself to stay asleep if it's not freezing outside and you don't have to, like, traverse the entire house. Yeah. But basically I was, like, super duper sleep deprived, to the point of, like, craziness. Yeah. Like, and really, you know what? It made me feel a lot better because my brother and sister-in-law, a few years later, like, they understood because they had a dog from, like, teeny tiny. Yeah. And it was later, like, when they had a baby, that they were like, in a lot of ways, having a puppy is harder than having a baby in the first little bit because your baby you don't have to walk a baby. Your baby can cry in the middle of the night and you just sort of, like, roll over and feed them or change a diaper while still half asleep, and they're pretty happy generally. Yeah. But a puppy cries in the middle of the night, they might have to get up 3 times, 4 times in the middle of the night, and that, that's an ordeal. Yeah. And
meanwhile, there's 1,000 of our listeners like, no, it's worse with a child.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, that's my experience as a non-human parent, and with the understanding that my brother and sister-in-law told me. I mean, not that having a baby is easy by any means. I'm not saying that, but they said that there are aspects of having a teeny tiny puppy that put having a newborn a little bit to shame. But speaking of which, my brother also reminded me, a lot of times my brother likes to send me one highlight of every show. Yes. He's pretty much like he's certainly my only blood relative that listens to the show. Right. And every time he listens to an episode, he'll send me either a one-liner quote,
I can't believe you said this,
or
here
a
it
factoid.
Is. Yeah.
And I can't remember what episode it was from, but apparently he listened to whatever episode that I talked about my 21st birthday.
Oh, with your Irish Catholic family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the one-liner I got from him was, just so you know, you say the phrase stripper assholes at least 7 times in that episode. And I'm like, oh, boy.
Really?
Apparently.
I thought I only got it down to one time.
That's what he said.
Maybe you've said that in real life.
Maybe.
Maybe that's what it was.
Every time he sends me something like that, I get like a little bit more self-conscious about it. And it's like, it's pretty much, you know, doing this podcast is like reliving your drunken college years all over again, where like the next day you're like, oh God, I can't believe I said that. I wonder who listened. Shit.
Occasionally, I think, like, I can't remember how it came. It might have come up with Disco, but talking about the fact that, like the fact that we had that show after my dad's funeral, and
not that that's funny, but
but the way it went was hilarious. The fact that, like, that episode ended with us singing.
We sang a lot.
Sing It's So Hard to Say Goodbye?
Yeah.
We sang a lot during that episode.
We did sing a lot.
And in that episode also is the first time we talked to Cindy Stew. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, okay, so the other day on Twitter, I follow Patton Oswalt. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you ever listened to any old Patton Oswalt, but he talks about the KFC bowl. Remember KFC had that bowl? Right, yes. It was just I think he refers to it in his stand-up as a bowl of sadness. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you know, corn. It's like all the shit
mashed potatoes, corn, gravy, chicken.
Have you seen the latest?
No.
So in South Korea, they have, apparently South Korea KFC.
Does it have to do with a watermelon?
No, but that's insanely racist. No. Fried chicken, watermelon, no.
No, you know what it was? Is my favorite website that I go to every morning that just collects funny pictures from around the world. There's a picture of, I'm nearly positive that it's a Korean KFC that has a statue of the Colonel in it, which most of them do.
Right.
In, like, very Asian robes holding a watermelon. And that's where I
don't doubt it. Maybe that could be the picture for this week's episode.
Maybe. Go ahead.
But they just released in South Korea the KFC Double Down hamburger.
Ew.
So it is a double down.
So KFC has hamburgers in Korea?
Well, there they do. So it's like, you know, again, using 2 breasts as buns. Hey.
Ew.
With a hamburger in the middle of it.
Better than a wiener.
With bacon. Hey. And 2 types of, it literally looks like a middle/high school Salisbury steak in the middle of 2 chicken breasts. And it's only with bacon. And it also has bacon on it. And it's only for sale in South Korea. So as a joke, I put up, hey, are there any thru-hikers in South Korea? Because if so, you need to check this out. Making it just kind of as broad as I could, just kind of a joke on Twitter. Well, I forgot that past guest, assistant to us, the woman that helped us with the prom, Cindy Stew, she's currently in South Korea teaching English. Here's the other thing. So one day she sends me a message. She's like, by the way, she's over there teaching in South Korea. One of the people that's helping her is Chipmunk's brother.
Whoa.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Chipmunk's brother, who we've never heard of before, is over in South Korea helping to teach English as a second language. And like I she told me that, and I was like, okay, this sounds a little bit creepy. I'm gonna go ahead and message Chipmunk's mom just to double check and make sure.
Just to make sure.
Because it's like, you know, this person could have drawn a whole lot from podcasts and that kind of thing. No, turns out it's her brother. He's teaching English as a second language over there. And so she's going to go to, I don't know if it's Seoul or someplace else, but she's like, I think this weekend or next weekend, she's going to a major city that has a KFC in it. And I was like, look, I'll pay you back. You've got to give us a review of the KFC Double Down Burger with bacon and 2 types of sauces. Well, that leads me to something that I think that you and I should talk about. We talked about before we recorded, was that occasionally, not on purpose, not by both of our choices, I'll do an interview when you can't.
Yes.
So be it like Disco or Bert Kreischer or Tom Rhodes, like those guys, like it just doesn't fit into your schedule.
I don't know that
barely fits into mine.
Right. I don't know that very many people get that, like, we live half a state away from each other anymore.
Right.
And North Carolina is a very long state.
North Carolina is one of the longest states in the union.
So, you know.
Yeah.
It's, if I want to join you for a podcast, either in your neck of the woods or in Atlanta or something like that, we're talking 5 to 8 hour drive.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Sometimes that's just not realistic. It does not mean that I don't want to be there.
Right.
And I listen to those episodes and I go, oh man, I wish I was there.
Yeah, and
but
like that's why I had to have my wife with me for
Right.
Bert Kreischer. Was I don't do well by myself, and there's a lot of people might understand. Like I have my questions, I have my stories, but it's like I enjoy having a second person there, especially a female voice. Like I don't know what it is. Like
have you switched to a different lubricant?
I didn't have a comeback. I didn't.
Don't forget to bring a towel. I can't think of anything other than a masturbation joke.
That's fine.
I can't.
That's fine.
I want to make sound effects, but they're like too inappropriate.
That's basically it. Yes, it's basically all of my interviews without puss are masturbatory. We'll be right back.
We wanted to give a huge congrats to the newest. There's no way to say nice old lady Thru-Hiker.
Say it as offensively as possible.
No, I will not. We wanted to give a great big congratulations to the new oldest female Thru-Hiker at 74 years of age, Nan Dragonfly Resinger, and her hiking partner Caroline Freckles Banjak. Banjak. B-A-N-J-A-K. However, her
Banjak.
We're super happy for you. Apparently she had done like a long section hike completion.
Right.
And when she finished that, she was just like, you know what? Let's do it all over again. All at once.
Let's do this again.
So, congrats, Dragonfly and Freckles. You guys are kicking ass. Also, big thanks to Disco for taking my place across from Pox and putting me to shame with an awesome, awesome intro, which I now feel like I have to rise to the occasion of.
Now, granted, he had a lot of time on a plane, sitting there waiting, and came up with it, and I feel like Woody Allen. I'm like, hey. I feel like if you have a cheesy like nature film, like when you have a cheesy like nature film, you gave that to yourself. Like you're like, that's kind of work. Nobody is like, hey, let's call that guy work.
You know what? You're just like a slimy salamander. We're gonna call you a goldbender.
Yeah, let's call that guy Hellbender.
You know how that girl over there is like rising out of her the previous girl.
She looks like a flower.
We're going to call her Phoenix.
Let's call her Phoenix. I got an idea. Let's call her Butterfly.
Let's call her the Phoenix.
Ooh, she looks like a rose. Let's call her Rose.
We're going to piss so many people off.
No, we're just helping people not have fucked up trail names.
Yeah, but if their name was Lone Wolf or the Phoenix or Hellbender or Rose,
they called themselves that before there were podcasts. Before there was us. We're here to help.
but we're not helping if it's already
We're not
happened.
helping anybody at all, no.
Yeah.
We're pointing out the flaws of other people.
Yeah, it's pretty self-righteous, actually.
Exactly.
We're going straight to
I mean,
hell.
self-righteous, we record ourselves every couple of weeks.
And people listen. That's the thing. I just don't understand.
Let's see. Oh, speaking of being nice, there's a few people I want to thank in general. Bobby Walters, she's great. Bobby Walters comments on everything. Bobby Walters is just an awesome young lady to have on our side. Elizabeth Gigante, or Gigante, Gigante. Elizabeth Gigante. She's pretty awesome. She's the one that wants to set up the what do they call it? Making the jack off motion, the Kickstarter to get us out to Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
And also the Vreeland brothers.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, they keep us in line.
Yeah.
Big thanks to them. You can find us on iTunes. Do us a favor. Leave a 5-star review
About anything at all.
anything. If you leave a 5-star review, give us 5 stars, and talk shit about us, we'll read your review. We promise. You can find us on Twitter at Pox and Puss, at Pox Holiday, and at Puss in Boots. Where else?
Our Etsy store is up and running. Mm-hmm. That is, you can either look up Pox and Puss or Dino Chase shirts. Actually, you can put in a lot of stuff and I'll lead you right to us, but those are probably the two biggest ones.
And let's see, just on Facebook, you can just find us. We're really close to 500 likes on Facebook for Pox and Puss. And Instagram. We just put up a bunch of stuff. A lot of people are pointing out the fact that I tend to just pretty much wear a black polo shirt and jeans.
That's accurate.
Not today.
Not today.
Not today. I look like a hipster.
Yep. Well, that happens too.
What else?
The plaid shirts.
Yeah, it
gave
does.
it away.
But it's got purple buttons.
So hipster.
Ding, ding, ding.
You're fingering your button as if it was a nipple.
Fingers in the middle of my chest.
As if it was a nipple.
Yeah. Anything else?
While going ding, ding,
ding, ding, ding, ding. You know, like you do with your nipples and your buttons. Yeah. Just go to AppalachianTrials.com. We're at the bottom of the page. Just click on us. Share us. The biggest thing is just share us with your friends. Unless you don't want to have them as friends anymore. Yeah. We good?
We good.
We good.
I like my beer like I like my ghosts.
See through?
Yeah. Maybe just a little bit cloudy.